ESPN makes shocking Celtics prediction. Boston ahead of New York? Paul George must deliver. Boston Celtics fans, buckle up because today is one of those days where the news just does not stop coming. An ESPN insider just made a prediction about this new-look Celtics roster that nobody saw coming. A former Celtics big man just addressed the one question every single fan has been whispering about since the Jaylen Brown trade went down. Payton Pritchard just revealed exactly what's happening behind the scenes in a secret West Coast minicamp. And a college coach just made a bold claim about the newest name to watch on this roster. 4 stories, 1 green jersey. Let's get into it. If you're new here, welcome to Celtics Daily Hub, your home for everything Boston Celtics every single day. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because after today's video, you are not going to want to miss what's coming next. Let's dive in. The Celtics could finish ahead of the Knicks. Here's why ESPN believes it. Let's start with the story that has the entire Celtics fanbase talking this week. As we all know by now, this offseason turned Boston's world upside down. President of Basketball Operations Brad Stevens made one of the most stunning calls in recent franchise history, trading Jaylen Brown to the Philadelphia 76ers. In return, the Celtics landed 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a veteran wing named Paul George. Meanwhile, across the state line, Philadelphia turned around and built a roster that now features Brown playing alongside LeBron James. Let that sink in for a second. Jaylen Brown and LeBron James, on the same team, in the same conference as Boston. So naturally, the conversation around the Celtics changed overnight. Boston finished second in the Eastern Conference last season. Now, with Brown gone and George bringing more risk than certainty, a lot of national media has quietly started writing Boston off as an afterthought in the East. But here's where it gets interesting. ESPN's Brian Windhorst is not ready to count this team out. Speaking on the Hoop Collective podcast, Windhorst dropped a genuinely bold take. He said Boston is set up for a strong regular season, going as far as suggesting the Celtics could realistically finish the year ahead of the New York Knicks in the standings. Now, that doesn't mean Windhorst thinks Boston is walking into this season as a title favorite. Far from it. His whole prediction hinges on one single factor: Paul George. George is coming off a rocky, turbulent season, one that included a 25-game suspension. But when he was on the floor, he flashed real value, especially when he wasn't asked to be the number 1 option, and instead settled into a floor-spacing 3-and-D role next to a superstar. And according to Windhorst, if George can replicate the shooting numbers he posted after returning from suspension last year, roughly 42% from 3 on high volume, taking 7 or more triples a night, then this Celtics offense next to Jayson Tatum becomes a genuine problem for opposing defenses. But, and this is the part every Celtics fan needs to hear, there is no guarantee George's body cooperates. Windhorst was blunt about that uncertainty, essentially admitting there's simply no way to predict how George holds up physically over an 82-game season, even though he looked outstanding shooting the ball in last year's playoffs. So why does Windhorst think Boston could leapfrog New York specifically? It's not because he believes the Celtics are the better team on paper, it's about health. He's betting that the Knicks, who enjoyed a relatively clean bill of health last season, are due for some bad injury luck simply based on the law of averages. Meanwhile, he expects Tatum to log more games this year as he continues to build back from his Achilles injury, and for Boston overall to be healthier as a unit. Think about what that actually means for how this team is built. Boston isn't asking George to be a second superstar the way Brown was. They're asking him to be a role player with a superstar's skill set, someone who spaces the floor, defends multiple positions, and makes opposing defenses pay every single time they collapse onto Tatum in the paint. If George settles into that role the way Windhorst is describing, this offense could actually look more efficient in certain stretches than it did with 2 ball-dominant scorers sharing the same touches. That's the version of this roster Brad Stevens is betting on. It's a prediction built entirely on projection, not certainty. Boston's margin for error shrunk the moment Brown left town, and if George's shooting clicks the way Windhorst is hoping, this gamble by Brad Stevens could look like an absolute masterstroke. But if the injury bug bites again, this season could unravel fast, and Boston doesn't have the same superstar-level insurance policy it once had sitting on the bench. Either way, for a Celtics team that's suddenly being treated like a conference afterthought, having a respected ESPN voice say, "Don't sleep on Boston," might be exactly the underdog fuel this locker room needs heading into training camp. What do you think, Celtics fans? Is Windhorst onto something, or is this wishful thinking? Drop your prediction in the comments below. Was there really bad blood between Tatum and Brown? A former teammate finally speaks out. Now let's address the elephant in the room, because ever since the Jaylen Brown trade was announced, one storyline has completely dominated the conversation. Was there actual tension between Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown behind closed doors? The rumors picked up steam fast. Reports surfaced suggesting the two superstars had grown distant, with some outlets even claiming their personal relationship had basically become non-existent over the last year. Add in outside media criticism that Brown was already dealing with at the time of the trade, and the narrative around a fractured duo only grew louder. But here's the thing. Most of the people fueling that narrative were never actually in the locker room. They were speculating from the outside. So this week, someone who actually was in that locker room finally weighed in. Former Celtics center Nikola Vucevic sat down for an interview and was asked directly about the Brown trade and the rumored tension between the two stars. And his answer is worth breaking down in two parts. First, on the business side of the decision, Vucevic pointed to the financial reality the front office was staring down. With both Tatum and Brown locked into massive contracts, and the NBA's new second apron rules making roster building brutally difficult around two max players, he suggested the writing may have been on the wall for a while. It simply wasn't sustainable to build a complete championship roster around two enormous salaries under the league's new financial rules. But then came the part that actually matters most to fans, the personal relationship question. And Vucevic was direct about it. He said that during his time in Boston, he never personally sensed any real issues or problems between the two players. He admitted he was just as surprised as everyone else when the trade actually happened, even with all the media speculation swirling around it, and made the point that plenty of things get reported in this league that never actually come to pass. He even offered a more graceful explanation for the split, suggesting that maybe the timing had simply arrived. Tatum and Brown had been together for a full decade, won a championship together in 2024, and maybe, in his words, some things just needed to change for both sides to grow. Now, it's worth noting Brown was the Finals MVP of that 2024 championship run, yet he spent his entire Boston tenure being viewed publicly as the second star behind Tatum. That's a legitimate source of frustration for any competitor, even if Brown has never explicitly said so out loud. And reports have indicated the two haven't actually spoken since the trade went through, even though Brown has publicly maintained he holds nothing but respect for his former running mate. Here's why this matters so much to the fan base. Tatum and Brown didn't just play together, they grew up together as pros. A full decade in the same locker room, the same draft classes of expectations, the same playoff heartbreaks before finally breaking through in 2024. When a partnership like that ends, fans want a clean explanation. They want a villain or a hero, or some dramatic falling out that makes sense of it all. But real life and real front offices rarely work that way. Sometimes a championship core simply runs into the wall of a hard salary cap, and the people involved are left to process a business decision that also happens to be deeply personal. So where does that leave us? The rumors of bad blood haven't fully gone away, and fans are still going to debate this one for a while. But according to someone who was actually in the building, this wasn't some toxic breakup. It might have simply been two great players and one incredibly difficult salary cap situation colliding at the same time. Meanwhile, on the other side of this trade, Brown has reportedly been putting in serious work this summer, fully locked in and motivated to chase a championship in Philadelphia alongside LeBron James. Whether that motivation is fueled by anything personal toward his old team, we may never officially know. Let us know in the comments, do you believe Vucevic, or do you think there's more to this story than we're being told? Inside the Celtics' secret West Coast minicamp, Payton Pritchard breaks the silence. Our third story takes us away from the rumors and drama and straight into the gym, because Payton Pritchard just gave fans a rare look behind the curtain at what the new-look Celtics have actually been doing this summer. Let's set the stage first. Pritchard is coming off a career-defining season, averaging career highs of 17 points, 5.2 assists, and 4 rebounds a night. A huge part of that breakout came because Tatum was sidelined for the first 5 months of last season, which forced Pritchard into a much bigger role, and he thrived in it. Now heading into this season, he's publicly said his focus is on improving his efficiency, drawing more fouls, and getting easier looks at the free throw line. But he's stepping into all of that in a completely reshaped locker room, following one of the most stunning trades in franchise history. And according to Pritchard, that reshaping process has already quietly begun, out on the West Coast. In an interview, Pritchard revealed that a kind of informal Celtics minicamp has already been underway in California, bringing together key pieces of the new roster to start building chemistry before training camp even opens. He named the group that's been getting reps in together: himself, Derek White, Paul George, Mike Conley, Sam Hauser, and Jayson Tatum, with more players expected to filter in as the summer continues. And naturally, all eyes are on Tatum's recovery. Remember, Tatum tore his Achilles and made his return to game action just 9 months later last season, an absolutely brutal timeline. So when asked directly how Tatum looked out there, Pritchard didn't hold back his optimism, saying Tatum looked good, and that after coming back that quickly, he fully expects his superstar to be even stronger and more explosive this time around. Now, despite losing Brown, oddsmakers still have this Celtics team pegged as the number 2 squad in the Eastern Conference, with a win total projection sitting around 51.5 games. That's a significant number considering the roster turnover, and it puts real pressure on everyone in that gym. Tatum to lead, George to prove he's worth the gamble, and yes, even Pritchard to keep developing. And that's exactly the mindset Pritchard says he's locked into. He made it clear that individual scoring numbers aren't really his focus. His words were about simply becoming the best basketball player he can be, adding to his game, and trusting that translates into winning for the team. He was honest that plenty of his role is out of his control, that's up to the coaching staff. But the one thing he can control is his own improvement. It's a quietly encouraging story for Celtics fans worried about chemistry heading into a completely retooled season. New pieces, working out together, months before the games actually count. That's exactly the kind of groundwork championship teams put in. And honestly, this is the kind of story that doesn't always make the headlines, but it matters just as much as any trade rumor. Chemistry isn't built in October when the games start counting. It's built in empty gyms in August, with guys getting extra shots up, learning each other's tendencies, figuring out timing on cuts and closeouts before a single possession actually counts in the standings. If Pritchard, White, George, Conley, Hauser, and Tatum are already logging that kind of time together, Boston is giving itself a real head start on a season where continuity is going to be more important than ever. A college coaching legend just made a bold prediction about the newest Celtic. And finally, let's talk about a name Celtics fans are going to want to remember: Chris Cenac Jr. If you're not fully caught up, Cenac Jr. is one of the newer names added to Boston's roster this offseason, and he just got a massive endorsement from someone who knows his game better than almost anyone: his former college head coach, Kelvin Sampson at the University of Houston. Sampson didn't hold back when discussing Cenac's potential as a shooter at the NBA level. He predicted that Cenac is going to develop into a 37 to 39% three-point shooter, praising his release, calling it clean, with the ball coming off his fingertips with strong rotation and a good arc. Sampson also pointed to his work ethic as a major separating factor, making the distinction that unlike a guard who's been jacking up threes his entire life, Cenac is still relatively new to shooting at this kind of volume, which makes his continued development even more intriguing. Now, context matters here. Cenac's actual numbers from this year's Las Vegas Summer League were a modest 27.3% from three, which on the surface doesn't exactly back up Sampson's bold prediction yet. But dig a little deeper, and there are real reasons for optimism. His free throw percentage sat at a strong 71.4% during Summer League, and free throw shooting is historically one of the better predictors of a player's long-term shooting upside. Combine that with the work ethic Sampson is vouching for, and you can see why a coach who spent years developing this young man believes the outside shot is going to come. Sampson also made an interesting comparison while discussing the Celtics organization as a whole. pointing to Payton Pritchard's development in Boston as proof that this specific franchise and coaching staff have a track record of unlocking players who might not have broken out everywhere else. Of course, Sampson was quick to note that a talent like Jayson Tatum was always going to be great regardless of the situation. But for a developmental prospect like Cenac, landing in Boston's system could end up being exactly the right environment. It's a name Celtics fans should keep firmly on their radar this season. He might not be a headline name yet, but if Sampson's prediction holds up, Boston may have found another diamond in the rough to develop behind the scenes. This is exactly the kind of story that gets buried under bigger headlines, but ends up mattering a lot come February and March, when injuries pile up and a team's depth chart gets tested. Boston has made a habit in recent years of finding contributors that other franchises simply couldn't develop, and if a respected college coach like Sampson is willing to publicly vouch for a player's shooting upside this early, that's the kind of signal patient Celtics fans should file away for later in the season. And that wraps up today's rundown, Celtics fans. To recap, ESPN's Brian Windhorst says Boston is quietly primed for a strong regular season and could even finish ahead of the Knicks, but it all comes down to Paul George's health and shooting. Nikola Vucevic addressed the Tatum-Brown tension rumors head-on and insists he never personally sensed any bad blood in that locker room. Payton Pritchard gave us a behind-the-scenes look at the West Coast minicamp, already bringing the new-look roster together. And Kelvin Sampson believes Chris Cenac Jr. is going to blossom into a legitimate three-point threat in Boston's system. 4 stories, 1 clear theme. This is a completely different Celtics team than the one you watched last season, and the road to figuring out who they really are starts right now. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button, drop a comment telling me which story stood out to you the most, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Celtics Daily Hub so you never miss a beat this season. Thanks for watching, Celtics fans. I'll see you in the next one.